my little buckaroos. My name is Mrs. Gibson, and I am so excited to be reading one of my favorite books to you today. First of all, I want you to meet my horse, Reba. She's a swell girl and fun to ride. And I am dressed in my favorite costume today. I'm a cowgirl. I got my cowboy hat, got my belt buckle, got my boots and my spurs on, and ready to read a story. So let's put Miss Reba over here for a second. And get ready to read this book called Cinderella. So Cinderella is very similar to another story that you've heard before. So as I'm reading this book, see if you can think of what other book or story this one sounds like. So, once upon a time, there was a rancher who married his second wife, the orneriest, meanest woman around the Mississippi. She was meaner than a rattlesnake, and she had 2 daughters who were the spitting image of her. The rancher also had a daughter who was just as sweet and gentle as she could be. Her name was Cinderella. And here we have the 2 getting married. Cindy was one of the prettiest cowgirls around. Riding her little horse, she wrangled and roped and galloped and loped with the best of the buckaroos on the range. But as soon as the wedding was over, that snaky old stepmother began to pick on poor Cinderella. She was so good, she made her stepsisters look bad. So her stepmother made her do all the dirty work around the ranch. "Mend those fences, tend to those cows," she would yell, "and shovel out those corrals." The stepsisters never did a lick of work all day, but Cindy didn't dare complain to her daddy because his new wife wore the pants in that family. When her chores were done, the poor girl used to sit down and rest among the ashes and the cinders at the edge of the fireplace. So her older stepsister named her Cinder Bottom. The younger sister called her Cinderella, but beneath her dirty old clothes, Cinderella was still as pretty as a peach. There's the old stepmother getting mad at her. Then one day, the biggest cattle king for miles around invited all the neighbors to a 2-day celebration. First, a wild and woolly rodeo, and then a second square dance with a real Western fandango. Cindy's stepsisters puffed up like 2 turkey gobblers. Even though they couldn't ride, they decided to gussy up themselves to fit for a king and enter the rodeo. Nice, patient Cinderella ignored her frilly shirts and frizzled their hair for them. "Don't you wish you could go too, Cinderbottom?" sneered the older sister. "Aw, you're just poking fun at me," said Cindy sadly. "You're right," laughed the younger sister. "Nobody could tell you from a cloud of dust." They're being mean to Cinderella, aren't they? As soon as they were gone, poor Cinderella broke down and cried. Then suddenly she heard a noise outside, almost like gunfire, but not quite. It wasn't a bang, bang. It was like a bling, bling. And there stood a little old lady with a golden pistol still smoking in her hand. "Who are you?" asked Cinderella. "Say hello to your fairy godmother, Sugarfoot," the old lady said. She twirled the pistol, slapped it back in her holster, and took a good hard look at Cindy. "What's the matter with you, honey? You're as down and dirty as a flop-eyed groundhog. Stand up straight. Dust yourself off." "Well, I want to go to the rodeo," sobbed Cinderella. "Can you help?" "Maybe yes, maybe no," said her fairy godmother. "Magic is plumb workless without gumption. What you need first, gal, is some gravel in your gizzard, grit, guts, Stop that tomfool blubbering and let's get busy. Time's a-wastin'. She reached for her golden 6-gun and Cindy yelled, "Don't shoot!" But her godmother had already fired straight up in the air. Bling, bling! Glittery sparks floated down from the sky and sprinkled Cindy all over with fairy dust. Instantly, her heart was filled with strength and happiness, and her rags turned into the finest riding clothes west of the east. A creamy white Stetson hat crowned her shining hair, golden buckskin chaps encircled her legs, and a pretty little pair of cowboy boots hung her feet like gloves. Buckled to the heel of each boot was a spur that shot out rays of fiery light. Then those spurs were set with diamonds as big as sugar lumps. "Now," said the fairy godmother, "where's that horse of yours?" She fired her magic pistol into the air. Zing! And Cindy's little gray horse became a little silver horse with a softly shiny coat. His hooves glittered and he pawed the ground. "Hit the trail, honey," the old lady said. "Remember, there ain't no horse that can't be rode, and there ain't no man that can't be thrown. And one more thing. Get home by midnight, gal, or you'll be sorry." So here she is in all of her new clothes. We'll turn the page here. When Cinderella pulled up to the rodeo, everybody turned and stared at the dazzling stranger on the silver horse. The rich rancher's son, a rodeo champion by the name of Joe Prince, came forward wearing the biggest belt buckle you ever saw and swept his hat off his head. "Pleased to meet you, ma'am," he said. "Likewise," said Cindy. Just then, Cindy's older stepsister rode a bucking bronco into the arena, and before she could say "oopsie daisy," that cockeyed wrinkled his spine, boiled over, and sent her flying up in the clouds. Then she bit the dust. Next came the second stepsister, but she couldn't ride a rail fence in a stiff breeze, and pretty soon she was eating gravel just like her sister. Cinderella helped her stepsisters up and brushed them off, but they never even recognized her. Then she remembered her godmother's gift of gumption, and she gave Joe Prince a big daredevil grin. "My turn," said Cinderella. Cinderella climbed aboard a salty bronc with a belly full of bed springs, a real rip snorter. She touched him with her diamond spurs, and he first tried to crow hop, and then he cat-backed, and then he sunfished, and he windmilled, and he jackknifed, but Cindy stuck to the saddle like a postage stamp. "Ride 'em, cowgirl!" cried the crowd, and Cinderella was the winner, with every curl in place. Next, with a figure 8, a butterfly, and a wedding ring, she won the trick roping event. And then she and her little horse really burned the breeze. They kicked the jackrabbits off the trail, they left their shadows 20 miles behind, and they won the horse race. They even beat Joe Prince. But Joe didn't seem to care. He rode herd on Cinderella right up to 11:45 at night, when she suddenly recalled her godmother warning and went galloping home. By the time she got there, her fine dudes had shriveled into sorry rags again, but she still had plenty of gumption. After a while, her stepsisters hobbled in, all stoved up from the rodeo. "Ha ha, you missed the champion cowgirl," the older sister said. "Nobody knows her name or where she disappeared to. And that old Joe Prince is eating his heart out," said the younger one. I bet she comes to the square dance tomorrow night, said Cindy with her new daredevil grin. The next evening, her stepsisters got all dressed up like a sore thumb and shuddered away to the dance, leaving Cinderella all alone, but not for long. "What's that?" she said, peeking out the window. It looked like a cross between a comet and a dust storm. It sounded like silver bells mixed with dynamite. "Let's get cracking, Sweet Pea," shouted her fairy godmother. "You're late. Rustle me up the biggest, dustiest, lumpiest squash you can find." And zingo! The squash became a stagecoach. "Next, we checked the trap line," said her godmother. Quick as a wink, they turned 6 cactus mice into 6 dapple horses, a fat-packed rat into a stagecoach driver, a rough, tough-honed toad into a stagecoach guard riding shotgun beside the driver. So we got a stagecoach and horses going to take her to the dance. "But what about my ugly old clothes?" asked Cindy. The old lady answered with a blast of fairy dust that melted into a dress that shone like the sun, the moon, and all the stars together. The skirt floated over the petticoat as soft and puffy as summer clouds. A rainbow of jewels glowed around Cinderella's neck, and the little diamond spurs sparkled once more upon her boot heels. "Thank you, ma'am," she cried. The fairy godmother blew the smoke from her pistol, holstered it, and dusted off her hands. "Remember, Miss Cindy, pretty is as pretty does," she said. "Magic can backfire, midnight or bust," Cindy promised, and the stagecoach rumbled away. When Cinderella arrived at the Cattle King's square dance, the fiddlers were tuning up for a toe-tapping jamboree. Joe Prince reached for Cindy's hand the instant he laid eyes on her. "Buckle on your partners, folks," he called, "and tell 'em to hang on. Let's shake our hooves like lightning until the early dawn." And Cindy answered, "Hurry up, cowboy, don't be slow. Alamede, left and do-si-do." Hand over hand and heel over heel, Joe and Cindy danced the daisy chain, the whirl away, the curly cool, and the grand Shanghai. They made their feet go whiskey-whisk. "Swing on, boys," said Cindy, "and do it right." And Joe called back, "Swing those girls to the middle of the night." Twirling, swirling, Cinderella lost track of time until all at once she heard the clock begin to strike 12. She hightailed it out of their lickety-split. "Whoa!" yelled Joe, hot on her heels, but he couldn't catch her. One of the diamond spurs fell off Cindy's boot as she ran. Joe picked it up carefully and dusted it off. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, not a particle remained of Cindy's gorgeous outfit, except for the second diamond spur, which she tucked away in her hip pocket. Pretty soon, word got out that the champion cowgirl was a wanted woman. She had left Joe Prince so lovelorn that he was tracking her throughout the territory, and he vowed to marry the horsewoman whose boot fit the little diamond spur. He tried it on many a foot, but no one could wear it. Look how many people lined up to try on the spur. At last he came riding up to Cindy's father's place. "Go shovel out the stable," hissed the stepmother, and Cindy reluctantly obeyed. First, Joe tried the diamond spur on the younger stepsister, but no matter how he stretched the straps, her hoof was too big. The older sister had crushed her feet into the tiny bitty boot, so just for an instant the spur almost fit. But then her boot split open and her toes popped out like puppies in a basket, and Joe Prince muttered, "Sorry," and headed to the door. So it didn't fit the sisters or the stepsisters. "My turn," said a voice that stopped him in his tracks. It was Cinderella, and almost her mean stepsisters almost died laughing. Joe let Cindy have her chance fair and square, and when he put the diamond spur around her dirty little boot, it fit perfectly. Then she pulled out the second diamond spur and buckled it onto her other boot, and at that moment, Cindy's little horse gave a whinny, and everyone heard a noise. See, the spur fit her boot. "Wing, wango, kazing, let her rip," shouted Cinderella's fairy godmother, vanishing her gold pistol. "Hold your fire," yelled Joe Prince, but glittering sparks of fairy dust went everywhere, sparkling down everywhere again. They turned Cindy's clothes from cotton to satin. They put quite a twinkle in Joe's eye, and Cindy's horse began to sparkle. "Yee-haw!" yelled the fairy godmother. So Cindy Ellen and Joe Prince got hitched and lived happily ever after in a ranch house full of love and rodeo trophies. Cindy's family moved to town where both stepsisters married city slickers, and Cindy's little horse kept his sparkling coat and his glittering hoofs to the end of their days, just married. Thank you for reading Cinderella with me. Take care, little buckaroos.